Welcome everybody, this is Liz Merrick and today we're going to learn how to make a Chibi Mermaid. Very cool stuff. This is a cake that has a lot of different techniques in it, from modeling to isomalt, hand painting, structure. We've got a little pearl and a little molded clamshell where you're going to use a little bit of gelatin. I basically try to squeeze every technique I could possibly think of into this class. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is build our structure, and we're going to use a 10-inch cake board with a 1/4-inch hole cut in the center. We're going to put our little foam feet on the bottom, 2 layers of foam, and we're going to cut a 10-inch piece of 1/4-inch threaded rod, and we're going to take a 1/4-inch nut and screw that down onto the bottom of the rod, starting from the non-cut end. Put that through our board with a washer, and then put a washer on the other side and another nut to secure the rod to the board. You can use a crescent wrench to secure the nuts on each side so that it's nice and firm. Also make sure that you've washed your PVC pipe, or sorry, make sure you've washed your threaded rod before you assemble this. We're going to take another 1/4-inch nut and thread it down about halfway and put a washer on top of that, and that's where our styrofoam is going to sit. This is just a 4-inch by 2-inch square that I've rounded the edges off, but if you were going to be doing this in cake, you would take a 4-inch by 2-inch piece of poster board and cut that out and put that on top of the washer, and that's where your cake would sit, and then you would carve down the edges with the cake and cover it in ganache, and then secure the very top with another piece of another washer and a nut. And you would cover the PVC with a piece of plastic wrap or some tape or something so that your cake is not coming in contact directly with the threaded rod. But for our purposes, we're using a styrofoam dummy. And I'm just beginning to cover the lower half of the body with some aluminum foil. And I've taken another piece of anodized wire and kind of created an area where the tail is going to be. I just wrapped that around the base of the threaded wire and brought that out to the side, probably about 8 inches long. And once I've built up my body with the aluminum foil, I'm wrapping everything with some good strong tape to just keep everything secure. And now we're going to start covering the body with a mixture of modeling chocolate and LMF fondant. That's just great for blending. And I've colored it with a little bit of ivory food coloring to get the nice skin color. And I'm using my favorite tool, the little plastic modeling tool that you can purchase in my preferred Amazon shop, where I have all of my things listed that I use very often, like my wire and my tools and stuff that I like. And you just use the flat side to smooth all of your seams down and build basically the body up of our mermaid. You can use a little bit of water on your hands to really get things smooth too. Just roll out a nice big flat piece of our mixture of LMF and modeling chocolate for the face. Just wrap that right over the top, remove any little lumps and bumps of leftover modeling chocolate, and smooth everything out like we did before with the tool in your hands. I'm just using a little bit of water on my hands to just brush out any imperfections. And then right in the center, we're going to take our thumbs and create a couple of indentations carefully. This is where the eyes are going to go. And we want those to be, roughly rounded squares. Basically, if you took the same shape as the head and put it onto the front of the face, that's what we want to do. People make a mistake very often where they put the eyes up too high, and that kind of makes the chibi look weird. You definitely want the eyes to be in the center of the head or lower so that you have maximum cute factor. We're going to add a little ball of the mixture to the center of the head in between the eyes. And basically we're making a little triangle, and that's going to be the nose. We just want to smooth out the edges with a modeling tool or with your fingers, and you just want the bottom of the nose to be flat and slightly pointed up, and the sides to be smoothed out. You can just use your fingers, and you're basically just making like a little pyramid, and that's going to be the nose. And you definitely want this to be very small, not too pronounced, because you know chibis don't have big noses; they have just teeny tiny noses. And you want this to be just slightly below the bottom edge of the eyes as far as placement goes. So the nose is almost directly in between the two eyes. We're going to create a cute little mouth by just using a modeling tool to press in and then pull down to make just a very, very small mouth. You don't want to make the mouth too big. It's just, you know, barely wider than the nose. Just creating a little bottom lip. And you know, chibis have different types of faces. You could just do like a little simple circle, or you could do like a closed mouth. You don't have to do the open mouth like this, but that's what I decided to do for this mermaid. We're adding a little bit more of the mixture underneath the mouth to create a nice pointy chin, just a very, very small chin. And we're also going to build up the cheeks. It's important to give the area below the eyes some mass. You know, you want them to be very chubby cheeks right underneath the eye. Otherwise, the chibi is going to look a little, I don't know, less cute. You just need the chubby cheeks to add to the cute factor. If this were made out of cake, make sure you're working with chilled cake, chilled ganache. Everything is very chilled. So when you're adding on all of this stuff, that your cake is not getting messed up while you're working on it. Smooth everything out with your modeling tool and blend the seams in just like we have before. You can use some water on your fingers. Don't worry about the back of the head. That's going to be all covered with hair, so you really don't need to be concerned about that. But if you're worried about getting the ganache on your hands, then you could put a piece of the same ivory on the back as well to just keep everything covered. We're going to take a small amount of fondant, not modeling chocolate, and press that into the area that we created with our thumbs, and this is going to be the eyes. The reason we're using fondant is because we're going to be hand painting these eyes, and if we were using modeling chocolate, then the color would bead up. So we want the white to be straight fondant. And you want this white piece of white to be completely flush with the face, not sticking out at all. It takes less than you think, so if you accidentally put too much in there, just take it out and put in less white until it's flush. And smooth that out with your hands, of course. Put a small piece of black into the mouth area to create depth. And then a very small piece of red is going to go on top of that to be like the tongue. And just use a ball tool or a modeling tool. These are the color shapers from Sugarworks, and I'm just kind of testing them out and seeing how I like them here. Just using them to press out the area where the mouth is. And we just put our little tongue in there. So now we're going to paint the eyes. First I'm covering each part of the white with a little bit of vodka so that our blue food coloring paints on a little bit easier. And we're going to cover almost the entire white in blue. And this is just, I'm just using a nice flat fine brush. You can also see these in my preferred cake tools in my Amazon store. This is actually a nail brush, so it's very great for painting. I'm just brushing on a nice even coat of, I think I'm using sky blue Americolor gel. And what we're trying to do is create a gradient. So we want it to be a darker blue at the top and then get lighter as we go down. And you create this effect by putting on the sky blue first, and then we're putting a little bit darker blue over the top of that. I think I used royal blue. And we're going to blend the two colors together and then use water to remove some of the color to create a lighter area down at the bottom. So you might have to go back and forth a few times of adding color, subtracting color, adding color, subtracting color, until you get a nice even gradient. But it's not too difficult. And then finish the colored area with a fine brush and outline the entire colored area with some of the dark blue. And that just kind of gives it a nice finished look. You can see I'm just using a combination of adding color and subtracting color to create our gradient. I'm just adding on some water and brushing off the color so that it's real light right at the very bottom. And then we try and do the exact same thing to the other side. So now we're going to use just a circle from a piping tip to create just a perfectly round circle right in the center of the colored area, and that's just going to help us know where to paint the black for the iris, for the pupils, and that just is you want that to just be centered right in the middle of the eyes. And then we're going to use a little bit more black to kind of color in the upper part of the eyes to just add some more depth to that gradient. Not too much, you don't want to cover the color that we've already put there, but just the more contrast you have between the tops of the eyes and the bottom, just the better it's going to look. And again, just use water or more food coloring to kind of blend that harsh edge and clean up any little boo-boos that you make, like I did right there, with just some water. And you just basically dip the paintbrush in water, wipe off the food coloring that you don't want, clean your brush, and then continue wiping it off until you've removed any color that you don't want. You can even use a little damp paper towel. And then we're going to put some little pieces of white fondant in the upper right hand corner of the pupil and of the iris to just create a nice shiny look to the eyes. And this is just really finishes off that chibi classic look. So you really want to make sure that you add in those highlights. Now we're going to add the eyelashes. We're just going to put a little bit of water around the edges of the eyes so that they stick on. And we're going to place a very thin snake of our black fondant just right at the bottom edge, as you can see, and do that same thing to the other side, just rolling that out, very thin snake. Figured you guys didn't need to see me roll it out. I think by now you know how to do that. And then we're going to roll out a slightly thicker snake. See how it's fatter in the center and then it gets thin at the ends? And we're not going to connect them you know, we're going to leave just a little bit of space between the bottom and the top. And that just kind of creates this cute little look. Just make sure it's thicker in the center and then it comes to a point. You just kind of round them out. And this completes our cute little eyelashes. And now we're going to paint on some final details for the eyes with some black food coloring and one of our fine paint brushes. I'm also just kind of smoothing out the area around the eyes one final time with my finger and a little bit of water. So I'm just adding a very, very small line just on the upper area right above the eyelashes. This is, you don't have to put this detail there, but that just kind of goes with our sketch, and it's just kind of like a little indication of an eyelid. And then to make our eyebrows, we're going to press and then lightly let go to create the eyebrow. And a trick for doing a nice smooth line is to, when you're painting, look where you want to be painting, like kind of look a step ahead of where your brush should be at all times, rather than trying to look where your brush already is, because then you'll end up with a wiggly line. So put your brush down and then look to the center and then look to the end, and just kind of let your hand follow your eyes rather than trying to go really, really slow. The good news is if you mess up, you can just take some water, wipe off the eyebrows, and try again. So now we're going to take some of our green modeling chocolate, or you could use blue or pink or whatever you want, and we're going to work that onto the lower body to create the tail. And I just do this in pieces because it's really easy to add modeling chocolate to modeling chocolate. You could also use 50-50, but I'm not worried about painting this tail. We're going to be brushing on some luster dust. So I just went ahead and used the modeling chocolate because it's very, very firm, nice base to kind of keep the base of the cake nice and sturdy and not wobbly. And just using my modeling tool to smooth out the edges. And just, she kind of looks like a slug at this point. It's like a slug mermaid. I remember when I was making this, I thought to myself, she looks like Jabba the Hutt. Like a chibi Jabba the Hutt. I rolled out a thin piece of the green modeling chocolate and put that over the top of the tail area just to kind of give it a nice clean finish. And then we're going to take a straw, a drinking straw, and just sort of pinch one end of it so it has kind of a flat side. And we're going to use the straw to create some scales. And I actually stole this technique from Timbo Sullivan. If you've ever seen his cakes, he's very good with the scale techniques. So, sorry Timbo, I stole your idea. And then I took a straw and created an angle to get kind of those hard to reach areas. I used to do this with a piping tip, but the straw really works good. So now we're going to make our tail and our upper fins. And this is created by just taking some gelatin and a little bit of luster dust and painting it onto a texture mat. I have a recipe on how to do this on my website, just under the recipes tab. I didn't want to go through the process of showing you here, but I just cut the one piece out into a tail shape and the two fins out. Just kind of guesstimated basically little half moons, and just made them kind of wrap around the body and attached them with a little bit of corn syrup or gum glue, but they still don't want to like really stay, like they don't want to like stay folded over. So I ended up taking a little piece of the ivory mixture and going over the top of the fins to kind of keep them in place, but you could also use wafer paper. And then for the shells, just a little bit of pink added to our ivory mixture, rolled them into a ball, flattened them out, and then used a modeling tool to just create a couple little grooves, and shells are done. Very easy stuff. Then for the tail, we're just brushing on some green luster dust. This is from the Sugar Art. I don't remember what color it is, but it's a real nice, pretty kind of green sheen to it. So you could use anything that you have on hand that's just nice and shiny. And then I used a darker green petal dust to create some depth on the tail as well, kind of down around the bottom edges and the top area. And whenever you create contrast, that just makes something look even shinier. So by adding the shadow down on the bottom and to the top, and then leaving the center highlighted, that just creates a real shiny look to the tail. And then I even touched the very center of the tail with a little bright white luster dust to even kind of create that stronger contrast. It's almost like doing like a shadow, like a eyeshadow technique on a mermaid tail. The smoky cat eye in mermaid tail form. You don't need to put anything special onto the modeling chocolate to get the luster dust to stick. It just sticks. Just make sure you're using clean brushes. I just placed my mermaid tail, just you can see it in the background there on top of a glass. I forget to tell you, but I glued a little piece of floral wire to the very end of the mermaid tail. And I just used hot glue because it's non-toxic and nobody's going to eat that little piece of tail. So now we're covering the board in a mixture of silver luster dust and vodka, and I like to use the Rolcom Silver. It's very shiny. You can get that from Caker's Bits and Bobs on Facebook. She ships from Australia. And then we're just going to finish the edge with a little bit of brown sugar. This is kind of going to give the idea of sand. You don't have to do this. You could actually just cover your board in fondant if you wanted to do it that way and you didn't want to use ice malt. But, you know, I thought this would be a fun way to kind of make our mermaid look like she was sitting in water. So now we're going to start melting our turquoise isomalt. I'm using Semi-Cakes brand isomalt. I used the clear with a little touch of turquoise Americolor gel melted into it so that it kind of creates this beautiful watercolor. And I'm using silicone cupcake liners to melt the isomalt in. You just put them in for 30 seconds at first and then 15-second intervals until it's fully melted. And then you just use the isomalt cups to carefully pour that in onto your board. And then you use a toothpick to kind of create these lines and stuff around the mermaid like little water ripples. And you know, it's just like, I think I probably used about 12 ounces in total of the isomalt. So that's two 6-ounce packages of that. And you can buy her isomalt on semicakes.com. I really prefer that isomalt because it's very easy to use, it's very easy to melt, you can use leftovers, I mean it's great stuff. And then I'm just bringing that isomalt all the way up to the edges of the mermaid, all the way up to the edges of the brown sugar, and it just kind of melts and just, I think it just looks really cool. I also wanted to tell you guys I get these boards. These are specially made boards from cakesupportsolutions.com, and if you want some, you can talk to Corey, the owner. He's really great. And these are already coated and safe to put cakes on, so you don't have to actually cover your boards in fondant or anything. So, and they come with the holes in them already. It's just a great time saver for me. Just finishing up the water with a little toothpick to make a couple more waves. To make our shell, we're going to take some of the gold isomalt from Semi-Cakes, pour that into our shell mold, and we're just going to tip the isomalt around to put a nice thin layer in the entire cavity. And do that with both sides. And then I actually just molded a real shell with some amazing mold putty. So that's how I got this mold. It's pretty easy to make, or you could buy a two shell molds or a two-sided shell mold. And just make sure that the ice melts all the way down there in the flat part, because that's how we're going to glue it together. So we want that to be the strongest area. And prop it up so that all of the isomalt sort of pools in that bottom area. And if there's not enough to pool, then just melt a little bit more and add a tiny bit more to that bottom area. Just like that. And we're going to let that kind of set up until you can basically touch it without it being really soft and melty. And we're just going to create a nice little indentation with our fingers. You should probably wear gloves for this. And that's where our pearl is going to be. So it just takes a few minutes for that to kind of set up. So in the meantime, I started with a pearl mold and some melted pearl semi-cakes isomalt. And I just poured enough in one strand of the pearl mold and just put that around. Right before it set completely and it was still a little bit pliable, I just took that out and wrapped that around her neck to make a little pearl necklace. And then I poured the leftover onto our silpat, and we're going to pull just a tiny bit of sugar to make a pearl. So you just kind of cool the isomalt down by folding your mat over and over until the isomalt starts sticking to itself, and that's when you know it's good to pick up. So it started sticking to itself, so I'm going to pull it all up and give it a couple of pulls to incorporate some air and make it shiny. This is called satinizing, but you don't want to do too much, otherwise your isomalt will get too warm, or too cold I should say. And you just roll it in your hands to create a nice round ball. And then just finish it off with a little bit of vegetable oil, and that just keeps it shiny. Sydney from Simi Cakes taught me this trick, but basically you always put vegetable oil over the top to keep things shiny. So now we're going to finish our shells, just indenting the very center area like we talked about before they set completely, but it's still pliable. And we're going to let those cool all the way, and then we'll assemble the shell. To assemble the shell, you take them out of the mold, you take a little bit of our melted gold isomalt, and you just dip one side of the shell into the melted isomalt and attach it to the other side of the shell. And just hold that together until it's cooled and set. Then we're going to paint the inside of our shell with just a little bit of the gold Welcome dust mixed with a little bit of vodka. Just kind of give the inside a little bit of contrast. I think it just looks really pretty. And then to make sure our clamshell is going to be able to sit up straight, we're going to dip the bottom into a little bit of melted isomalt and just press that onto our silpat to dry, and that just creates a nice flat spot for the clam to sit. And then we're going to attach our pearl with just a little bit more melted isomalt, and that's done. And just set that aside until we're finished. Now we're going to start making a hand. We're just going to take a bit of your ivory combination of fondant and food coloring, fondant and modeling chocolate, not food coloring. Well, I guess some food coloring. And we're going to cut the fingers like so, and just round the tips. create a little palm area with our modeling tool like this, and use a ball tool to sort of define the inner palm. And just attach that onto the body. You don't need any water or anything special, it just kind of sticks to itself. Arrange the fingers so they look elegant. And then just smooth out the seam with your modeling tool and your fingers and a little bit of water. And then you're going to basically do the same thing for the other side, for the other hand. Just start by creating the wrist and flattening the ends where the finger is going to be, and cut the fingers out, thin the tips, define the palm, and then attach to the body. Make sure your fingers are not too long. Chibi have very fat, very tiny little hands, so keep the fingers short. Smooth out the surface with your hands. Alright, time to make the hair. This is the last step in the chibi process, pretty much. Takes a long time too, and quite a bit of the fondant and modeling chocolate mixture. It's probably about a good 5 pounds. So 2.5 pounds of red fondant mixed with 2.5 pounds of modeling chocolate. I use the red from Sweetastic. And we're basically going to be creating strips and then texturizing with lines from our modeling tool. And you have to start with strips that are laying up against the back and building on top of that. If you try to start laying strips on top of the head and go from there, you're going to end up with this gap between the hair and the body, and all of that will just rip off and fall. So you have to build up from the bottom and layer it on top of each other and work your way up, creating nice little, folds of hair, and try to make it look, elegant and pretty, not just strips of random fondant. So think about placement and, flow. Try and make the hair look like it's kind of like draping over her shoulders, or it's, kind of playfully going over her eyes. Make sure you think about where the part's going to be so you're aware of where you're putting your seams. So it does take quite a bit, but if you try and skimp on that, then all the hair will fall off. Make sure you use a little bit of water underneath your pieces of hair too, so that they stick to each other. We're getting there. For the pieces around the face and on top of the head, I used slightly thicker pieces of the mixture so that the top of her head and the hair has volume. So it looks like, she's just got like some really big pin-up-y type hair. So I created a nice thick piece for her bangs and then some nice thick pieces for the crown of her head. And you can see all of the pieces are sort of converging at one point, and that's where the the part in her hair is going to be, and that's where we're going to place the little starfish on top. I'm using just a kind of a ball of the modeling chocolate mixture to just sort of build up the back of her head so that she doesn't look too flat, and then taking one final piece and putting that over it so she has a lot of volume to the crown of her hair. And then just use your modeling tool to just create the final lines of the hair and give it the nice flow that you like. And once you're happy with it, then you can create your starfish. And just using a little starfish mold, you could put a flower in her hair, you could put a different kind of shell. This is just another little detail that you can put in or not put in depending on what you prefer. And that just goes right on top of her hair. And that basically finishes off her look. And then you take the piece of gelatin that we made earlier with the tail and a little piece of wire glued to the end and just insert that into the end of the tail. And then we take our finished clamshell and place that next to her. And that's it, guys. We've got our finished Chibi Mermaid. And she looks very cute, if I do say so myself. So I know I went fast through this, but I didn't want it to be too long. This was 4 hours of filming condensed down into about 40 minutes. So if you have any questions and you need some clarification on things, please feel free to always email me, message me on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are. Ask me questions if you need them, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.